wanted to welcome you, and I'm thankful that you all took out some shopping time out of Christmas to come and to be with us. We're going to tape it because we have a couple of people I know and have said that they can't be here today for the flu or other school business, so we're going to tape it for everybody, and if you all want to listen to it again, you can. I just want to talk first about the changes in our math committee. Most of us, a lot of us in here are already on that committee, but there's several that's not, so I kind of want to talk. We had named it the Developmental Math Committee because in the beginning we specifically looked at developmental classes and the redesign and some of our pilot programs. And now Diane and the deans have asked us to broaden that a little bit to the Math Pathways program, and there's this big push nationally for Math Pathways and to kind of do away with at least 5-5. There's a big push for that, but definitely narrow our, instead of having so much developmental, to push our students into credit-bearing classes as soon as possible. So that is what we are now looking at, and Diane has given us a charge for that. I assume then our name will then again change, because now it was math redesign to developmental math to, who knows, maybe we come up with something catchy and fun other than just math committee. But that's kind of where we are now. So I'm going to let Diane talk for just a minute about the charge. If you look, I gave you a copy of the memo that she sent me about the charge she wants for our committee and where we're looking at. If you look through that really quickly and listen to her, you see there's a lot that needs to be done. So the committee will organize this, but we will definitely need help from all faculty on all campuses. So we'll be going out and making subcommittees from this one committee to get this ball rolling. So Diane?
It's wrong to give me a microphone and tell me we're in front of a camera, because I go back to my cocktail lounge days. So I want to break into the love, or something like that. Thank you all, first of all, for letting us come here and talk about this. And I'm going to invite Randy and Donna, when I'm finished, to put in any comments they want. But we are asking you to broaden the charge that you have because you are a representative group. And as Mickey said, you are obviously totally free to add any people that you want to the committee. But we're really asking you to look at several things that we believe could be helpful to our students. The first of those is looking at some alternative math pathways for students. Obviously, students that are going into STEM disciplines need one set of skills, but students going into the liberal arts, the humanities, students going into the social sciences, there may be better alternate endpoints for them in math. And we know that nationwide there's a lot of attempt to determine if what we are asking of students in terms of their final ultimate math requirement is the best one for what their pathway is. And we know that's also fraught with difficulty because students change pathways and everything else. But anyway, we're asking you to look at those. Also, in talking with Mickey last week, talked about the fact that maybe there are other math courses in some disciplines that students are taking, which could, in fact, count for their general education math. And so we're simply asking you to consider if there are other courses and if we might move toward requesting that those satisfy general education requirements. I also have two other things on here that are only tangentially related. One is the use of Ed Ready. Now, Susan, you all have been using it quite a bit in Carrollton.
And I just started with it with everybody being trained, but I think all the instructors with the adult ed program are really pleased with it.
And we have, KCTCS has purchased the license for Ed Ready. So we have it, and we can use it for any way we want. We can use it with adult ed, we can use it with developmental math, we can use it as a boot camp, we can use it as supplemental instruction. But I would like to ask you to look at that and to consider ways that we could utilize that better, because we haven't been doing much with it except at the Carrollton campus.
And I'd be glad to share that with Mickey or whoever, if you want me to do that, or, and then you can get in touch with the crew.
Absolutely.
So I'll forward it to you.
And then the last thing really came up in the context of ATD 2.0, where we're trying to look at institutionalizing a model for student success. And advising is a big piece of that, but also tutoring and all of the other kinds of support services. And I know that the advising committee has been looking at possibly a college-wide approach to tutoring, and the writing lab is interested in that as well, in there being sort of central coordination of, because some campuses now have a good, have at least a writing center. Other campuses right now do not, or have one that's patched together. And we obviously want the students at all the campuses to have the same kind of services available to them. So it came up in the context of the writing lab, and so I'll simply ask you all to think about that in the context of the math labs, the support labs, and whether or not, a central administration of those would be helpful or valuable, since you are meeting and talking about other things. But these were some of the things that were on our minds as we talked about student success and student success developmental. So. Student success in math. So, Donna, would you like to add anything, Randy?
Well, the only thing I would say is that we were also talking about having a coordinating body for the various pilot programs that are going on. I mean, I know that we have pilots on probably every one of our campuses right now related to developmental math, and several different activities and trials that are going on. And so maybe providing some coordination and oversight of those, so we're actually getting data and understanding of what's working and what isn't working, so that we can look at making those changes.
Randy?
The only thing I would stress is that in our discussions, we'd like you to think about this not about just developmental math. It's not just about developmental. It's about math in general. And looking at math and how it's taught, how it's presented, pathways kind of concept in your discussions. And so don't be thinking that it's just about developmental classes, because in our mind, that's not really what it's all about. It's about a larger set of issues in terms of how math classes are delivered, what the competencies are, that sort of thing. So that's, kind of keep that in mind. Developmental being a piece of it, but not the whole thing. If that makes sense.
And as I've put at the bottom of the charge, these are intractable problems. They've been around a long time, but and we know that we're not going to solve all of this. We've been, obviously, you all have been working hard for years and years with different models, but we are hoping that you can provide us with some recommendations on these 4 things as soon as you can. Now, I don't know what's realistic about that, but at any rate. So I want to thank you all in advance for doing this. And I'm not real coherent today. I don't feel real well today, so we'll see what happens. I want to say that today.
Thank you. Thanks, Diane. All right, Ben has been to several conferences lately, and he has a lot of information about some math pathways and ideas from that, so he's going to present with us, and if you have any questions or discussions, we'll have that either as we go or after, whichever he prefers.
Is there a way to control it from there?
That I don't know, that would be a different question.
Well, I could stand behind the podium whenever you want to do.
Well, I can do it for you.
There's special clicks that I've got, jokes.
Is green the math color?
Yeah, we coordinated. Yeah.
It's all about money. Or hope.
Okay, let's see if I can multitask here. So, I'm very pleased looking at the agenda because I feel like I'm going to kind of give a broad overview, and then Jennifer's going to give a more specific what's happening in particular colleges. You want me to use this?
Yeah, for the video.
My plan is to talk about three big national projects: the New Life Project with MAG, Carnegie's Quantway and Statway, and the Dana Center's New Mathways Project. A little historical perspective, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said in the Gettysburg Address, 407 years ago, our fathers thought that everybody take calculus was a good idea. And then we realized it wasn't. So chronologically, New Life Project, which was led by Jack Rotman from Michigan, gathered a big group of people together to talk about what we could do. There was a subcommittee of the Developmental Math Committee for AMATIC. AMATIC is the American Mathematical Association of Two-Year Colleges, big national organization. And they came up with some ideas. Let's see if I got it in order here. This is a quote from their website. Just asking, they started by asking each other what were the main problems with developmental math, and isolation of our faculty from the community, excessively high use of adjunct faculty, and obsolete content. And what they've come up with is developed quite a bit in the last 6 years, but this is kind of their vision right now. He presents at every conference that I ever go to. He seems to be there, putting forward the New Life Project. But basically, if you think about this as your 65 replacement, and this is your 85 replacement, and trying to get as many of these other branches addressed through a mathematical literacy course. And several people have taken up the call to write mathematical literacy courses. Kathleen Holmes is one. I'll be using her textbook in the spring, the Math 75 Math Lit course that I'm teaching. But there are other people that have written other textbooks called math literacy. But the idea is to focus on some different skills and rethink what students need in order to take a quantitative reasoning course. That's our sort of contemporary math 146. We don't have currently a college level statistics class that's a 100 level that doesn't have a college algebra prereq. Lots of states do. I think John Ward is working on that. I think that's an important thing for us to think about. These would be our sort of downtown 105, 110, 116 type courses. And I think this is mentioned in the charge that it would be great if we could unlink the college algebra prereq for the math for elementary education teachers. There's a lot of, I'll talk later about some of the external pressures that are kind of binding our hands on some of this. But so basically they've totally revamped developmental math in this model. And we're nowhere near this because this takes a lot of thinking. You can't just slap an algebraic literacy course in and call it good. But it's an interesting vision of a non-intermediate algebra-based universe. And this is the, another nice graphic. These are the 4 big pieces that make up that math lit course, which is the proportional reasoning, functions and models, the numeracy, and the algebraic reasoning. And so that sort of forms in the, with the New Life Project's mind, that forms the basis of being able to do college level math. Instead of, you know, the traditional, everybody needs to factor, everybody needs to solve inequalities. This is kind of broadening. And I think that's a feature of all of these projects, is this sort of backward design where you look at the college level course and then you think about what would be required to have a good prerequisite for that. So the New Mathways project, whoa, slow down, buddy. The New Mathways project comes out of Texas. It's the Dana Center, and they've taken on a pretty huge task working with all of the community colleges in Texas to try to create new pathways. So this is just something I took from their website. These are their guiding principles. One of the interesting features of their program is that they have a student support class that is a college credit-bearing course. And it's kind of like an FYE course, but it's designed specifically to link with math courses. So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like what Benita and her team are doing in Southwest, because it allows you to really talk about specific math strategies to be successful. And they found that to be highly successful and highly effective. So, you know, you can see that in point 3. This, based on proven practice, you know, everybody is into data and talking about what works, and we know what works, and let's use what works. So, I think that's a good principle, but sometimes difficult to carry out. So, that material is available to anybody. I think it's open source. But again, I'm not suggesting that we take any particular product that already exists. I'm just talking about these national efforts that have already taken place. And then Statway and Quantway are actually more recent, and this is the Carnegie Foundation, and you actually have to pay to belong to this. When I was in Seattle, working in North Seattle, our sister college, Seattle Central, joined Statway. And what you get are the curriculum materials, you get professional development, you get support, you get to be part of this network where we share data and they talk about, you know, what's happening. So if you look at the data, 2011, 19 community colleges, 2 universities, over 1,100 students. So it's not like a huge effort, considering the size of our community college, size of all the community colleges in the country. But they are doing some interesting work in terms of doing it in multiple places and trying to coordinate those efforts and use that statistical analysis to understand what, you know, moves students forward. Basically, their design, and I think something that both Statway, Quantway, and the New Mathways project have talked about, which is an interesting question, is you design your prereq for your college level course based on what's in the college level course. And that means that in a way they're very linked and aligned and coordinated. But what that does is it makes it difficult then to branch off, right? Because you're on a path, you belong to the Statway path, and if you take the first semester and then you decide to do something else, then that's a challenge. But on the other hand, students know they belong somewhere. They know I'm on my Statway path. This is going to take me 2 semesters, and at the end of this, I will have my college level statistics done. I'll talk more about that in a second here. This is just a graph that I got from the Statway. You know, they go around the country bragging about how amazing their results are. You know, their results are pretty good because they're taking students that place into low classes in the developmental spectrum. They put them into Statway, and then, you know, their 50% success rate is you know, much better than the under 20%. Looking at students getting credit in 2 years, which is probably higher than maybe what we have. So, again, I think that's not about Statway, that's just about a pathway. It's about putting students on a pathway to a college level course with one prerequisite, lots of intentional support. So, some things that these projects share, the backwards design I've already talked about, the recognition of multiple college level outcomes for students. As I'm thinking about this college, one of our challenges is that downtown has 3, 4, 5 different outcomes. You can kind of lump them into 3. You've got the sort of technical outcomes, which are associated with the tech campus. You've got the 146 and you've got the 150. Now, as I look back in the last year, 146 has only been offered at Southwest twice in the last year and at no other college. So really, we're going to struggle with this, the recognition of, we can recognize it, but how do we actually implement it? How do we get multiple pathways at small colleges where we just want to make sure that the class is filled and we can give students opportunities to do college level math. The inclusion of student success material I think is huge, and that links into professional development, because unless you, like the new Mathways project from the Dana Center, unless you have a class where you're farming out your student success initiative and efforts, then all of your instructors have to start to get into this whole program of how do I talk about student success? How do I talk about something that I've never been trained to talk about? I know how to talk about math, I know how to talk about proportional reasoning, but you want me to talk about how to study or how to take notes? Like, nobody ever told me how to do that. So I think that that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle. And then the focus on applications to life and contextualization, I think that comes from the ability, if you design backwards and you have a prereq that leads directly to a specific class, then you really get to think, like, what am I preparing these students to do? What do I want them to be able to do? Instead of, this is college algebra, I know most of you aren't going to take calculus, but I have to worry about the fact that there are students who are taking calculus, so I got to make sure everybody's got all their I's dotted and their T's crossed, or their I's crossed and their T's dotted. And I was looking back at the barriers we identified in the developmental math forum that was in April, and I just thought it was interesting to try to think about which barriers the math paths should knock down or help address. One of the reasons that we're even talking about math paths is because we think it is a solution to helping students get through to the college level math, be successful, get a degree, da-da-da-da-da. So, that's a good theory. I think it makes sense to a lot of us, but, as I was looking over it, I saw a lot of different barriers that it should definitely address, like the math courses containing inappropriate content. Well, that sounds kind of saucy, but no, I just mean like fact. The math sequence takes too long for students to complete. We're trying to address that by designing math paths. One size doesn't fit all, and directing the majority of our students towards college algebra. This one is a huge issue, because even if we do a lot of work and design 146, we're still talking about, 66 students in fall 2014 took 146. That's 3 sections on 2 campuses. 39 students in spring. We didn't offer it in the summer. And I'll make a number up. I don't remember what it was for fall 2013, but you get the point. It's not a huge number of students. And we have a chicken and an egg problem in terms of, do we invest a lot of energy into bumping up 146 and creating this pathway, and then only to find out that we're being shot down by advising and programmatic requirements? Or do we start wrestling with the programmatic requirements and the advising, and then start putting in work when we're sure that we can get students to be excited about 146? So this isn't going to go away, but if we have a math path that leads to 146, it should help to start to address it. And then these are ones that the paths may address, and this really depends on that design phase. And one thing that I think is important to think about is that, and the reason that I'm not suggesting that we take any of the 3 models that I talked about, is first generation implementation contains lots of support, dollars, professional development, enthusiasm, ownership, excitement. Second generation implementation is often like, hey, here's a box of stuff. This works in our college. Now you go do it. It's like, well, we've been here before. So, one of the things that I think, whatever we decide to do, is we have to take ownership of the product. And there's lots of good work that has been done that we can reference, and we can maybe use some stuff, but it's got to come out of the math faculty themselves who are excited about, we're going to do this math path, this works, this makes sense for Jefferson students, and it's going to work here. And so, I think that all of these could fall into the pedagogical development side of things, thinking about how you run that, Math 75 class or Math AB class or whatever you're going to call it, so that students are successful there and they get to the next phase. So that's what I was just talking about, right? The silver bullet. This, we're not in. I think that we're at the point where we know we're not searching for some product to go buy. So the question is, how as a committee do we get together as a group? How do we involve more people and talk about what we want to accomplish, and then start doing the work, paying attention to the data and the research and other colleges. Jennifer's going to talk about other colleges, but at the same time, taking ownership of that. So this came out of a conversation with Benita, because I realized that really we've got a sort of small campus downtown issue. The small campus issue is that it's easier to have one central developmental class that people then fork out of to go to a college level course. It makes sense from an enrollment perspective. It makes sense for students because they don't have to worry about, well, if I take 75 and I'm going to switch over here. So everybody goes into a class, we call it 65, and then we can send them to 146, we can send them to 150. Who knows if we can get this statistics branch opened up. But from a small campus perspective, an enrollment perspective, that makes a lot of sense. But from an advising perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Because then the advisor doesn't have to worry about, well, what path are you eventually going to go down? This is more of what I've been sort of pushing at the downtown campus. And if you were at the Math Advising Forums this fall, you saw a picture that kind of looked like that was upside down. But you've got your technical paths, and we're trying to promote 62. Brandon's been offering some sections of that. We might have Anissa offering some sections of that in spring. I'm trying to develop this 75 146 pathway, and then of course we have the college algebra path. And the really challenging part of that, and I've started to engage it a little bit in my developmental classes, is how do you talk to students about what they want? Because right now, the programmatic requirements for so many of them are, I need to do college algebra. So I'm dealing with a student in 55 who's struggling through 55, and they're saying, I'm going to do nursing. Well, okay, I'm a cheerleader. I want to support your dreams. I want to believe that you can do it. But I'm also seeing the sort of reality here, and I'm wondering if I can help you get the feedback from your own progress and situation. And that's very, very difficult. And I don't know how to have that conversation except through just trial and error and learning as I go. But if we employ this, then the advising has to be very good. And the advising probably needs to be part of math teacher professional development, because math teachers are going to be really critical in helping students make decisions about them. So, this is what I can sort of envision as a humble beginning, because Math 46 is our obvious alternate pathway right now. We don't have to do any more work. It exists. It's on the books. So, construct a thoughtful pathway to Math 46. That could be something that's based on the 75, the bluegrass, which is what I'm doing in the spring. But again, what I'm doing in the spring is based on a textbook that was produced by somebody else. What we really should do is we should look at our 146 classes and the two instructors who have taught it for, I don't know how many years. But obviously there are other people in the room who have also taught it. But let's get everybody in the room. Let's talk about, okay, what do we need to do 146? And then design 75 based on that. And maybe also based on some of the principles that other people have thought about in terms of their math literacy courses. I've already talked about the second generation implementation issues. I think that the same design principles are the key to having a good process for that. And of course, those, you know, it's all well and good to get in a room and talk about, hey, let's develop this class, but we've got some serious obstacles ahead. I think we need to really dig into the programmatic requirements, and we need to understand, you know, who is asking for college algebra and why. And, you know, and so maybe there's a significant political arm to this movement. I don't know. I haven't been in Kentucky long enough to understand how all that works, right?
And one thing that I think Ivy Tech did in their design with their pathways was they went to the faculty in those programs and asked them, they didn't ask them what course do you think is the right math course for the students. They asked them what are the competencies that are needed for this program. And then they went and looked to see if they had a course that had those. And if it had them, then great. If it didn't, then they had to revise the course, or they maybe had to create a whole new course to meet the competencies. So that's one way to think about it, I think, is to go to those different programmatic areas and find and talk to the people who teach that and ask them, what do your students need to know? What do students in communication arts need to know in terms of math? What do they need to know for nursing? What do they need to know for whatever, for psychology, whatever it may be, or the trades? That's one way. That's one way it's been done.
I also think that a lot of programs just believe 150 is it, and that if they knew they had an option, particularly if they had an option that they were convinced was better preparing their students, you know, they would be willing. And I think that's where you probably need to lean on us, the deans, to work with the other programs, because I really think there are a lot of programs that just they don't even think there's any option to 150, you know, for the college level.
So kind of a marketing problem.
Yeah, and also
Knowledge.
just something where, you know, we make it an academic priority for every program to consciously choose. And then we try to work with them to get through a curriculum change if we want to make an alternate course acceptable.
Right.
And I'll just throw out
Yeah.
there that there are a lot of APPs where 146 is already on them, where there's an advising problem too. And,
Right.
you know, there are so many programs where we can already use 146 and we're not.
Right, and so maybe one of the difficult things for this committee is how do you do that work simultaneously? Because if you do one piece of the puzzle, you know, it's going to kind of not go where you want it to go because everything has to be addressed. So how do you address the advising and the programmatic part and the design all at the same time? I don't know. That's a challenge. And I think that this, you know, to get excited about it, to put time and energy into it, we've got to convince ourselves that this is going to make a significant difference. And so I don't know how we convince ourselves of that. I feel like it makes sense that it would, but I'm young and crazy. So some questions, I don't know which one you want to pick up on or if you want to talk about any of those pieces, but those are some questions that kind of stood out to me in terms of the big picture.
The bottom bullet is certainly addresses students who think of themselves as transfer students, who are not pursuing a two-year degree and they think they're going off into a trade. They think they're going someplace else. We've got to have a lot of buy-in in this puzzle of the state of Kentucky of, will what we're doing meet your needs? Bellarmine, U of L, EKU, Western, wherever those students are going.
So how do
They
you,
can do a wonderful job here, but they're not stopping here.
so how do we begin having those conversations? I mean, how do you talk to Bellarmine or Kentucky or University of Kentucky or University of Louisville? I mean, obviously, we've got an enormous number of years and experience in this room, connections across universities, so we just start fielding people out. You got Bellarmine, you got U of L. You just
We
start.
have a U of L articulation committee, and this would be a perfect thing to talk about with that. So we have a channel for talking
Right.
about issues like this.
And others at KCTCS have those same channels at
Right.
Murray and at UK and at other places, I think.
And
Don't
then
they?
the political piece and the external pieces where, I mean, I have no expertise in math, but I can help, we can help in those other ways through the networks that we have. Like the academic council has all of the chief academic officers from KCTCS. So, I mean, if, you know, if we, you don't want to push this and say this is really an effort that Jefferson wants to undertake to get these, get credibility for these other pathways and to get programs to look at what it is their math requirement is. I mean, there are ways that we can help on that level.
I think one of the other things too is that if we look at some other schools and how they did it, they had to tackle that issue of transfer. And so we might want to look at how places like Ivy Tech and other places that have done this dealt with the transfer piece, because I know that they have, and they've talked about that. And so they figured out ways to do that, because, and I think the Dana Center too also had a very big important thing about transfer. That was an important piece of their project, was to make sure that whatever they came up with did actually go to the universities, otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do. I think CPE won't be that big of an issue. And remember the document that they came up with, there was another meeting recently that was talked about, where they had those guidelines, those kind of guiding principles. And this is right up that alley, right up the alley of that. So I don't think the CPE is going to be an issue. The university program expectations is the big one, though, I think.
I would think that if we're going to be talking to the individual programs here at the college, I think that is a good place to start, because a lot of them already know how their courses are going to transfer and what these students need to transfer to what universities that those programs are going to be accepted. So I think starting at the universities, to me, would be kind of jumping the gun. I think when we start with our individual programs, they need to know, for them to be successful, their students to be successful, they need to know what program their colleges, and that's why they're gonna move those students. You need to go to this college because they're the ones that are gonna have this program or whatever, or what those expectations are. And so if we talk to them, we probably could get a lot of those answered without having to go out. And then that would kind of narrow down where we need to go from there.
Yeah, that's a good idea. What about the enrollment issue? I mean, can we even offer 146 on a smaller campus?
We can if we choose to. Well, I mean, the main thing is, what we need to do is, we've got to establish that 146 is a viable, even preferable alternative for a large number of students, and then we direct those students into that class.
I think if you look at the who is on that campus and what they're majoring in, and probably in most cases, like Stephanie said, 146 may be more suitable for most of them than 150, they just don't know that.
Yeah.
Because advisors don't know.
And the
that.
fact, the fact we don't.
So I think you have to look and see what students you have on that campus.
Do we have strong program sort of demographics? Like Carrollton students do a lot of this. Bullitt students do a lot of that.
I think so.
Well, we have a lot of students who are transfer students, and then we have a lot of students who are in the technical programs, the applied process technology, the engineering tech program. A lot of them into the healthcare, nursing, and transfer.
Do the tech students do the 110 at Carrollton?
We have done 110, and we've also done the 146 before.
They'd love to do 116.
We had 126 a couple semesters ago, I think.
All right, well, that's what I got.
Thanks, Ben.
You're welcome.
Now you're excited for our break.
Okay, perfect timing. Yeah, right now I just have, just a small break that I need to go to the restroom, more to eat, and then Jennifer, that gives Jennifer time too to get her presentation ready, so.
She's very good.